All right, everybody, welcome back to the Mindful Hunter podcast. I'm your host, as always, Jay Nichol, and we have the Borderland Hunting boys on the podcast who have been absolutely crushing it this year. We actually met for the first time almost coming up on a year ago at Wild Sheep Society, and one of you was like an inch away from winning the backpack, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I was rooting for you guys because I know you're younger guys and like gear's expensive. And I was like, oh, I hope these guys win. So for people who don't realize, I did a thing at the sheep show last year where you could come by the booth and you could, we would fill the bag up with like a random amount of gear. Or no, did you get to fill the?
Yeah, we filled it up. So you gave us a weight. So you'd say 25.2 pounds.
Right.
And you have to fill the K4 with whatever gear. You had a big tote there. You had to fill and feel and kind of get a feel for it of like, okay, what is 25 pounds going into a pack? What kind of gear can you fit into it? Yeah.
And how was it within 0.2 or 0.3? Like it was you and one other dude got it exactly the same close. Was it right on or was it?
Yeah, I think Tyson was super close. I was way off. It threw me for a loop. Like I put in all this gear and then I was like, okay, like this is like whatever, 55 pounds or whatever the number was. And it was way off. And I was like, holy crap.
Yeah.
Like you could
now,
so much
when you
gear.
did yours, did you like look at gear and try and guess how much each piece was? Or did you just throw shit in and then try and estimate the weight?
I did it by feel. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think people who guessed gear did better. Like, oh, that's a stove. That's going to be 3/4 of a pound. Okay, there's a shelter. That's going to be 4 pounds. And like I think those people, because I'm the same way, man. I'll grab a bag and I'll be like, oh, that's 40 pounds. And it's like 56 pounds or I'll be way out one side or the other.
Yeah. I think that was my tactic too. I was just throwing in gear, kind of give it a feel. The old fishing. Yeah. Oh yeah. That's a fish.
But yeah, you guys came to the booth. You did that. We kind of had a bit of a chat. I started following you guys on Instagram. Was it the year before one of you guys killed a monster muley?
Yeah, that was me. I killed
that was that year. That was last season. So that would have been just a couple.
So it was the season before the show. So it would have only been like 4 or 5 months before the show.
Yeah. 2023 season.
Yeah. And I remember you guys sharing that buck with me and I was following you guys on Instagram and I was like, holy shit, man. And I'll be honest, I go back and forth on like newer, and I don't want to use the term like content creator, like, you know, negatively, but like there's a lot of people, especially younger dudes who are like popping up and like, I'm always 50-50 because like sometimes they start making stuff and it's like, you guys are kind of missing the point.
Yeah.
But like the thing that struck me about you guys was like, I was like, this is the type of shit I'm hoping for when I see younger guys coming up, like, you just love hunting. And it's not like, I don't see you trying to make the same stuff other guys make. I don't see you like trying to do the like classic, you know, follow this system to try and get more followers or like any of this bullshit. It's just a couple good BC boys who like love hunting and just want to share stuff. And it's not like you're super egotistical about it. You're very grateful about it. And it was just like, it was very like inspiring to me because like that's what I hope for when I see younger guys. And because people always send me messages and they're like, how do I get sponsored? And I'm the last guy to ask because I fucking hate sponsorships. But they're always asking me like, how do I blow up? How do I get bigger? And my answer, and I know they don't like you, my answer is always the same. That should be the last thing you're worried about. If you find that thing that you love and you just don't stop doing it, all that other stuff is going to come later. Like it will fall into place. But if you're thinking to yourself, how do I blow this up? How do I make this big? And then that is affecting every decision you make. You're just going to make cheesy garbage, man. And people are going to be able to smell it a mile away. So like where I would like to start is let's start like personally, and let's start with you, Dalen. Maybe just give like a little bit of background, where you grew up and how you got into hunting.
Yeah, so I grew up in southern BC. I got into hunting through my grandpa. My dad's not a hunter. Okay. My grandpa was a big hunter for most of his life. And I grew up predominantly hunting whitetails. Like I would go up with him when I was, 8, 9, 10 years old, just watching him. I wasn't hunting until I was 10 years old, but I would just watch him. And I'd be on the back of the quad, watching his every move and learning. Then when I was 10, I got into shooting whitetails. We would shoot during youth season, basically the first buck that I saw. And that's what I was taught.
Yeah.
The spike velvet muley, spike velvet whitetail, like September 3rd, youth season. And I did that like pretty much until I got my driver's license. And then I started exploring my own areas and expanding my territory. And that's when I kind of got serious about hunting. Like I realized that it was much more than what I had been doing. And, got into muleys, elk was a bit later on, but the whitetails really started it out for me. And especially watching my grandpa do his thing and learning from him, that's what really sparked my passion.
And what kind of whitetail hunting was he into? Like, was it stand hunting? Was it still hunting? Like, what kind of stuff were you guys doing mostly?
Yeah, like he built a lot of those like wooden tree stands. He would build like with logs. He'd cut dead logs and build a tree stand 15 feet in the air.
Yep.
We'd sit in those, but to be honest, a lot of it was driving around on the quad early morning, like evenings, because that was just easy. Especially I understand with him, he had a young kid with him. The easiest thing to do is rip around the quad, look for a little whitetail, and that's a lot of what we did.
Yeah,
and worked out.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
And give me some context. How old are you guys now?
I'm 24.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Tyson, how old are you?
Yeah, we're both 24. We grew up together. Grew up in the same town, so hung out with young lads before we were hunters, and then have developed into this amazing hunting partnership that is just something that'll last forever.
So let's get into your background a little bit. How did you get exposed to hunting? And you originally grew up in the same area?
Yeah, mine was similar in a way in that grew up kind of quad hunting, truck hunting. It was my dad that introduced me into hunting. He did a little bit of hunting growing up, mostly deer. He had got one elk in, what was it, 92, I think 1992. So long before me, us being younger there. But yeah, basically quadding, backseat of the quad, got my first deer. Yeah, same thing right away at 10 years old. Every single year, kind of whitetail, mule deer here, there. And then right in there with Dalen, as soon as I got my license, I was ready to take the next step and started getting out on my own as soon as I could do that. And then eventually, this passion grew to, I would say, an obsession.
Yeah.
It's funny. I'm jealous now of like guys like you, because I'm in my 40s. I got a family. And I think the most precious thing we have as a hunter is time. I went on the Exo Guys podcast last year, and the biggest thing that we talked about, the biggest thing I think, and it took me a lot of years to recognize this, but the biggest thing that influences success over the year is how much time you have. Like I literally can see the number of days that I put out in the field increases, the number of things or the quality of things I kill increases. Like, for sure. I don't see that same 1-to-1 ratio with gear or courses or books or like nothing impacts success as much as time. And when I think about how much time like younger dudes have and just how obsessed you guys get, like, yeah, I'm jealous, but not in a negative way. Like it gets me super amped up because I wish I had, that kind of, not endless, because I get it. Everybody still has obligations, but I'm glad you guys recognize like where you're at and what you're passionate about. Like it took me years to find hunting as a passion. So obviously you guys get together, you decide to do Borderland Hunting. I'll link the Instagram page in the notes for everybody listening. I think what I'd like to get into, obviously you guys have had a lot of success, and not only that, like quality animals. And I want to take a moment and talk about this because I've shared a lot about this on my page and how trophy hunting gets shed in a negative light. And we're going to talk about killing quality age class animals a lot here. So I want to be clear. It's not about having some big thing to put on your wall. Like, yeah, that's a benefit, but it's about, I know roughly where you guys live. You guys could go tag out every year on like middle of the road shit pretty reasonably. Like there's no shortage of animals out there.
Yeah.
But I think the point is you guys have got to a place where it's about more than that. There's like you're trying to create a certain level of challenge for yourself. And after having done this for a few years and got some experience under your belts, you're looking for a special kind of animal because you want that challenge in the hunt. So I just want people listening to understand that. But knowing that's a goal, it's not just about tagging out. It's about finding something special that we get excited about and that is like a mature representation of the species. Do you guys actually have a strategy for how you look at your year? As far as like, do we have an off season? Is there a scouting kind of cam season? Is it more like off the hip, or do you have like a technical strategy as far as how you're looking at the whole season with the different species, scouting versus hunts, etc.? And especially because there's two of you, so it's not like you can just do whatever you want. You got to kind of communicate and see what the other person is thinking. But I'd love to dive into that a little bit, because I think and I'm going to put myself in this pile. I think that's where a lot of people are missing the boat. They get the one elk hunt of the year. They're busy, doing workouts on Instagram half the year. And then they get their 10 days off. They go out there, they can't find a bull, and they go home again until next year. And they wonder why they never killed anything. And it's like, well, because you screwed up back in June when you didn't start scouting. But like, that's the work that not enough people are talking about these days. So I would love to kind of dig into how you guys look at your year kind of cohesively.
Okay. Tyson, do you want to go ahead, or do you want me to dive into that?
You can start off here.
Yeah. So basically, start off in January, we do a ton of shed hunting. So shed hunting allows us to explore new areas. Obviously, animals winter in a little bit different areas than they tend to be in the fall. But that allows us to tap into some new territory almost every year. And with that, after shed season, we usually transition into cams as soon as the snow starts melting. So as soon as the snow starts melting and we can get into our spots, we're usually out there, we're putting up cams. And that's like, I'd say almost every weekend that we can get out, we're out there setting up cams and going into our zones, into our honey holes, and setting up our cams for the summer. And the summer sorry to interrupt. How many cams do you think you run like peak?
Say probably 30 between the two of us at least.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. 30.
Any cell cams, or are they all SD cards?
All SD cards.
I'm assuming just no service for starters.
Yeah. Well, we have
illegal in BC during hunting season.
See, and this is what holds me back. I'm like, oh, it's like great. Like, it would be nice, especially with some of the more remote stuff. Like I'm working some whitetail spots. I'm up in the Peace. And I mean, it would be nice just to know in July and August if there's even animals coming into my licks without driving 12 hours north. But then I think about the pain in the ass of going up there and like ripping all the cell cams out and putting back in normal cameras. And I'm like, it's just not the hassle.
Yeah, because then you're obligated to go pull them in August or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And I love the mystery, like being able to go into a spot and pull a cam and like not knowing what's there. It's like,
does it not just change the hike itself? Because like a scouting hike is like kind of like, it's not that I have to get myself amped up for it, but because I can't carry a weapon and I know I can't kill anything, you can only get so excited about just general scouting. But when there's been a cam soaking for a couple months at the end of the hike, like it just puts it's so easy to get excited to go on that hike.
100%.
Yeah.
Okay, so we run cameras in the spring, and then we kind of hit the summer. You're at a bit of a lull, and where do we go? Where do we go from here?
So these past couple of years, we've been taking up a lot of backpack training. So the bodies get they don't get used to the heavy packs right away if you don't train up until September, and then you throw on a heavy pack and you're hiking in September. So we started loading up our packs with bags of salt or whatever and training. Going up steep inclines or whatever every couple of days. So we've implemented that. That's a new thing for us, keep us in shape towards September.
Now, are you guys trying to do any particular distances? Do you put a lot of thought into like heart rate? Or are you just trying to break a sweat? Like, how do you guys look at that?
We just kind of throw the packs on, and, we know our limits and we try to push those limits. So find a nice mountain and hike up to the top, make a goal,
That's the benefit of BC, man. Like, I get a lot of people who ask, and they're like, they live in the Midwest or they mid something else. I'm like, I don't know, man, incline treadmill. But it's like, A, it's just not the same. And B, it's not as exciting. It's not as fun. Like, You know, I find I'd way rather, even here, I live right in Vancouver and I have to go on a trail, but like at least the trail's interesting. Like I can put my headphones on, I can listen to tunes, and at least the scenery changes, and it's like it keeps me a little bit more engaged and interested. And it does, like I find walking on a treadmill doesn't quite prepare you for walking in the woods, like ankle stability and wet ground and all the rest of that stuff.
Yeah. For me, it's nice. I've got a trail like walking distance from my house, and I'm able to see that kind of growth and development in my own body over from, say, the summertime. Once I really start thinking about elk is usually what's on my mind as September is approaching, and I can throw on that 50-pound pack and do that whatever day I can, whatever after work, whatever I can make work. I'm usually hitting the same trailhead, and then the difference between even June all the way going into August, it's like adding more weight, and you can feel the difference and getting ready for that season. And yeah, definitely the past 2 years, I've really stepped up the game on that preseason training, and this season more than ever, I've never felt so ready. We had an amazing pack out this year that pushed our bodies to the limits twice. I would say 2 different pack outs, and without, I think, that preseason preparation and training, it would have been a really, really tough grind.
Yeah.
So we're in the summer. So now how do we start thinking about hunts? What do both you guys do for work, and what's your vacation situation like?
That's a good. Yeah. So I work in fisheries. I've been at the same company for 4 years now, and have got myself into a comfortable stage where I can take up to usually about 4 weeks vacation every year, and I'm usually saving all 4 weeks for hunting. So
Right.
I'll do a couple days in the preseason, just because when we're doing like long trips out to different regions for scouting and that, it's nice to have that extra day. But when it comes to hunting season, yeah, usually I can take off a whole month. I'll split usually a couple weeks in, well, maybe 3 weeks in September. And then October is a really busy time for me for work. And I can't get out of that, unfortunately. So usually 3 weeks in October, I'm working straight through, and then it allows me to do a couple weeks in November for muleys.
Perfect. And what about you, Dalen?
I'm a blue collar guy. I work in industrial plumbing, and I usually get to about 3 weeks off. But my boss, shout out to my boss, he's super, super chill. He's a couple years away from retirement, so he's like, man, go live it up. Go take your time off, you know, and he supports that, which is really awesome. But yeah, about 3 weeks off. We always take about a week or 10 days in September, and then a few long weekends here and there, and then we always do a week in November for muleys.
Yep.
Yep.
So talk to me about, because you guys were quite successful on goat. We've talked a lot about elk. We've talked a lot about, deer. Sheep and elk sheep and goats are always like kind of top of the BC kind of conversation.
Yeah.
Where did the, drive or motivation to get a goat, and when did that actually start? Like, were you up scouting those locations beforehand? What did that look like?
So
Tony.
Yeah, Uncle Tony. Yeah. So once we started getting more serious about hunting, I have a good mentor. He's my Uncle Tony, and he's a super accomplished hunter. He's done a bunch of sheep hunts. He's got a bunch of stone sheep, and he's got a lot of goat spots that he knows. So started talking to him a bunch, and he I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. He plugged us a spot.
Yeah.
And we were able to get up into that spot, and we were super successful. I mean, it's not a spot where you just go up and there's goats everywhere, right? You got to really, like, this is a unit where the odds are super, super high of drawing. So like there's only a few tags for the area, and people don't put in because you have to grind on this hunt. It's steep, super, super steep and nasty, and you have to really work to get up there into the alpine. So
now, obviously, without getting into too much, are there any, because here's one thing I've found, because obviously, I still have yet to kill a goat, been on my fair share of goat hunts, same as sheep hunts. spent 15 years as a forestry engineer in BC. So I've covered a lot of mountains. I also do a lot of hunting in the States. And one of the most challenging things about British Columbia is navigating in the mountains, especially because sometimes we have trails, but there's no way of even finding out that those trails exist. Like when you go down to the States, every horse trail and its cousin is on the map and it's labeled, and it's like, it's a totally different environment. For most of the areas you guys are in, to get up to Alpine, is it kind of like brush bashing, or are there some old outfitter trails? Like, what's that situation like? And are there things that you can talk about that maybe have helped you navigate that, either finding those trails or figuring out how to be better at bush bashing and getting up into the Alpine?
Yeah. One of our like main techniques for the hunting that we do is to avoid people and get away from people. So no matter what the species it is, we look where there's not roads and where it's like, okay, someone probably wouldn't want to go in there. And that's kind of what we're basing all of our hard work off of, is getting into these areas, pushing through 4 hours of deadfall in steep country where you're just angry and mad and don't want to be there. The best is when you push through and make it through and get into those spots where it's like, okay, there's no way anyone else is in here, and if it is, props go to them. You're also a hard hunter, a hard person that works hard, so it's definitely pushing those spots away from people is what we focus on.
You guys are much too young to remember Fred Penner, but there was this children's show when I was a kid called Penner's Place, and he was this kind of weird, creepy dude with a guitar. And anyways, he would go through this tunnel at the very beginning of the show, and he would pop out, and he would be in like this different world, and it was Penner's Place. And every time I have those moments, it reminds me of that, because it really does feel like you go through this hell, but then when you come out on the other side of it and you pop out into the Alpine, it does feel like you're almost in this, like, what was that book where they used to go through the closets? Narnia or something like that. Like,
yeah.
You do pop out in this kind of like secret location that you feel like you're discovering.
Yeah. It's a hard thing to do in BC. Like, BC is like, there's way too much access. Everywhere you go, there's pretty much a road or old logging road or trails or wherever you go. Like, it's really hard to get into those spots that are away from people, and it's frustrating sometimes.
We got to have a conversation off air, because that is not similar to the experiences that I've had. But I tend, and I'll share some of the locations later with you off the air, obviously. But this year was one of the first years I literally got turned around out of areas. Like I had to fucking throw in the towel. There was a couple spots where, one spot in particular, I have never actually physically turned around, but this one was just like, this is impossible. I mean, I could do it, but then the question was, how am I getting a goat out of here? Like, I could barely get in here. And there's two of us. Like, I don't like this. It got to the point where it was irresponsible. Like, this is just, it's bordering on unsafe. But I do know too, like, that is one of the things that really differentiates different regions of British Columbia.
Yeah, for sure.
When you start getting up into 7 and parts of 6, or like the Muskwa-Ketchika kind of region, like, you're talking like hundreds and hundreds of miles of untouched wilderness. Mm-hmm. And the conversations I've been having lately with people, not only is that more challenging for access, it also results in lower population densities of the animals that are there. Because I think one of the things that's serving you guys well is that animals thrive off of edge habitat. They love cut blocks. They love a little bit of urban development. They love logging roads, cutting things up. And I think you actually end up getting a higher density of animals in those areas where that's why Idaho, Montana, Wyoming, all these areas that don't have that, like, thick vegetative cover that's just like blackens out the sun, and leaves no feed underneath the canopy for those animals. So that's interesting that you guys, the challenge is not so much how to get up to the Alpine or how to get into the spots, but how do we find spots that are actually more challenging to get into so that we have less pressure.
Yeah, because what we found is those areas that are easy to access, there's animals there, but it's hard for animals to grow mature when they're always getting shot out of clear cuts and where people can get to them easily. But when you're looking for an older age class animal, going farther and deeper than 95% of people are willing to go, that's when you're finding that older age class animals. And that's what we found. It's just like pushing our limits and getting past all that, because you can get a decent 4-pointer like off a logging road or whatever if you drive around enough. But to get that really older age class animal, I mean, obviously before the rut maybe pushes them into those areas, you have to go deep and you have to go farther than people are willing to go.
So let's nerd out a little bit on the goat hunt. Talk to me about like the tactics. Like, how long were you guys planning to go in for? What was your gear kind of sleep system like? Yeah, give me a bit of the nerdy stuff on like what that, because I mean, that's like as alpine backcountry a hunt as it gets, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, you want this, Dalen, or me?
Oh, sure. So we both have exo packs.
Yeah.
I recently got the K4 5000. Tyson has the K3 4800. And slowly over the years, we've been kind of building our gear. So we don't have like the most expensive or the lightest or the most premium gear, but we have like enough where we can go and we can get it done. It's not like, I think of back in the day, like guys didn't have all this ultralight stuff,
Yeah.
So we're doing what we can for now. Like obviously slowly we'll build into like the super lightweight tent and the super lightweight sleeping bag. And so I don't know, I have a Browning 1-man tent and a regular sleeping bag,
I didn't even know Browning made tents.
Yeah, I got it like way back in the day. I think Tyson has a better one. He's got a 2-man.
My gear is like 90% Amazon, I would say. Like my whole pack is basically Amazon.
Yeah.
I love it. This is great. Especially for a guy who I was, where was I today? I had to take my kid to this thing and I was thinking about this video I want to do because the new bows are all coming out and everybody thinks they need a new bow every year. And I wanted to do a video on why you don't need to buy a new bow this year. And that got me thinking about how I think people often misinterpret what I do with all the gear reviews. Like I'm trying to get people to buy more gear when actually what I'm trying to do is get people to do the opposite, because I understand how expensive it can be to go through 3 pairs of boots before you find the perfect pairs of boots, or 3 tents before you find the perfect tent. So I'm more like, listen, let me share all this gear information so that when you are ready to go buy the one tent, it's more likely that we're going to get you into the right tent quicker, and it's going to save you money and leave you more money to spend on hunting. Also, if I can take some of the lifting as far as like doing the research on the nerdy stuff, and it leaves other people more time to do hunting, because I do think, and I've seen this with newer hunters where they really stress about gear. Like you have no idea the kind of emails I get and DMs for guys going on their first sheep hunt. And I'm like, just go. You'll be fine. You won't die. You know what I mean? Like, I don't care if it's a Hilleberg or a Nemo or a this or that. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, but I think people panic when they lose a sense of control. And because they have so little control over everything that's going to happen to them out there, they want to take control over the things that they can, back here. And I think the lesson, I love hearing you guys say this because dude, and I still say most of like the legit killers in BC are like not even, I guarantee there's like 190-inch mule deer hitting the dirt every year in British Columbia that never see the light of day because they're these like dudes who live in like small towns in British Columbia. They're wearing like Wranglers and Mac jackets and like they don't give a shit about any fancy gear or Instagram or any of that stuff. They're shooting it with the same gun they've been shooting for, the last 20 years with like a Redfield scope or whatever on the top of it. Like, I think there's a ton of that going on in BC, and all the dudes, and I'm like the poster child for this shit, but all the other dudes are running around with the fancy stuff, and not killing half as much stuff as those other dudes. So I really love, okay, I jumped in on you there though. So let's get back to kind of like, a little bit of the gear and the preparation and the strategy for this goat hunt.
So I'll dive back in. I think we were planning on going for 4 nights. So basically what we do is we have freezer bags, and each freezer bag is a day of food. So we pack our days of food. So, 5 days of food. Yeah, jet boil. We have all the regular stuff, trekking poles. We have sleeping bag, tent, gun.
What are you guys shooting for guns? Because this is a hot topic these days. Like people are losing their mind over small cartridge, big cartridge, this, that, the other thing. What do you guys both shoot?
Yeah, it's funny. I was going to say this before we drop into that, but it just brought up a thought of mine. But after Dalen got his bowl this year, the day after he posted something on our Instagram story there about his rifle, which he'll get into a little bit here maybe, but that got way more attention than the elk. Of like people replying, wondering about the gun. So like people nerd out on guns. Like it's definitely something they nerd about. For me, super simple. I got just I don't even know. My dad got it for me probably 2012, 270 Savage.
Okay.
The basic model gun. Like it was probably $400 at the time. And then I put a Vortex scope on it, I think 3 years ago, Viper. Yeah, but nothing special, nothing crazy. Like eventually I will get into a newer gun. We're not going to deep dive into that conversation, but leaning towards Tika right now, but we'll see what I end up getting.
You and me both. So I was in there and then went to the Fierce. And now I'm going back to Tika, but that's a conversation we can have later on. And what would you say is your your comfortable range with that setup? Like, what are you looking to get into in order to feel comfortable taking a shot on an animal? 400.
I've shot further, but 400 is where I can hit the same bullet hole consistently, and like I'm happy to always shoot out to that. Never had to yet.
Yeah.
But.
And what type of practice do you do on like a yearly basis? Like, do you go out and just make sure the scope is zeroed, or do you actually build some type of like shooting practice into your year?
I don't shoot enough. I'll be honest. I know I should shoot a lot more than I do. Every year, about maybe a month and a half before season, I'll make sure it's sighted in, and then leading up, I'll maybe shoot, I'd say a box before season and a box in season. Like I'm not shooting. I'm not going every weekend shooting, but just confirmation my gun's on. Like I'll drive up, I'll slam a couple bullets at 400 just to make sure everything's dialed, and then just ready to go out that next trip.
Yeah. But you also have reasonable expectations. See, I hear people see what you say, and then they want to go take like a 600-700 yard shot on an animal. And I even liked if you said 400, not 500. 500 is a number I used to toss around all the time. And the more I've probably shot 70 rounds in the last 2 weeks, which is probably more bullets than I've shot in the last 3 years. And I'm completely revamping how I look at rifle hunting because I've done so much archery hunting over the last few years. I think I oversimplified rifle hunting in my mind, or I just didn't give it the attention that it deserves. And I think I was throwing around like 500 a lot. And then after shooting more and seeing actually what I'm capable of and like where I should be shooting, I think that 400 is a much more realistic cutoff for people who aren't willing to sink a serious amount of energy. And I don't think you need a big fancy gun with a big fancy scope, but I think if you want to realistically kill stuff over 400, you need to be intentional about the way you're practicing with your gun and your ranging setup and all, especially mountain hunting. I think that's something else people forget. It's not like we live in a place where we're going to be taking a lot of flat shots with predictable wind. You're going to be on one side of a canyon shooting across a canyon, maybe like two intersecting canyons where you're going to have complex wind going on. You're either going to be shooting really steep uphill or downhill. Like there's going to be a lot of other factors at play that I think really minimize that effective range for people. So that's encouraging to hear because I think that's very realistic.
Yeah, and just a simple setup overall. Like even this year I got into a bipod for the first time.
Right.
Same thing, Amazon. It was like $23, and I shoot a lot better than I did before with it. Same thing with my rangefinder, Amazon, $50. Like it's just super simple, basic setup, but like it's it's a range I'm comfortable with, and it's a range that I can get within with all the hunting we do.
Yeah. And what about you? What's your rifle setup, Dalen?
So same thing. I grew up shooting a 30-06, and I shot that up until about, say, 2 years ago, where I was leaning towards going for a Tikka, and I was seeing all these, carbon fiber barrel, fancy guns, and I was like, do I buy the Tikka, or do I just if I buy the Tikka, I'm going to want to upgrade in a couple of years. So I went for the classic Fierce Rogue 7mm with the Zeiss scope, and shot great. I mean, I put in a lot of time on the range the past couple summers, and was hitting good targets at some good groups at 500 or 600 yards. But this season, I had a conversation with you on Instagram about this, and when I shot my big muley, I shot him, and then I went to reload, and I had a jam. My bullet jammed, and it was stuck inside the barrel. And I was sitting there and he went down, but I was sitting there and I was trying to smack the bullet out of the barrel, and eventually I got it out, but I ignored it. I was like, okay, maybe I was too fast, too aggressive on cycling the bolt. And then with my elk this year, same thing. I shot him. He went down, and he started kicking, trying to get up. And I went to reload, and same thing. Bullet got jammed inside the barrel, but this time I couldn't get it out. And I was sitting there trying to get it out and doing everything that I could. And I was like, man, I'm so thankful that I made a good first shot, because if I didn't, who knows what would have happened. I would hate to lose an animal. Yeah. But we had a conversation. You were going to Tikka. I'm thinking maybe the same thing. Like Tikkas are tried and true. Like they're just good rifles, and I think that's a good option.
And I also think it can be whatever you want it to be. Like if you want to go drop, I mean, I think the $1,200 or whatever T3X stainless is right now, like no bells, no whistles. You can leave it completely alone. And I think that's going to be your 400, 500, 600 yards, depending on how much time and energy, no problem. But also it's such a popular platform. You could drop it in an XLR stock. If you want to make it foldable, you can cut the barrel off, and Proof has pre-fit carbon fiber barrels. You can upgrade the trigger. What I like about the Tikkas is you can spend a little bit on it, get into the market. You're shooting a very reliable gun. And then as your skill level and your pocketbook kind of increases, you can turn that gun into whatever you want it to be. Because my problem with the Fierce, I shoot the CT Rival. Do you have the titanium action? I can't remember.
No, it's the regular Rogue.
So that I do not like the action in the CT Rival, the titanium action. I think I don't like titanium actions in general. Like I think, and we could have this conversation, but I think certain things aren't meant to be lightweight. Like I don't look to shave a whole lot of weight on my sleeping pad. Like I'm 6'1", 240. I used to use one of those Neo Air X lights, and it was like sleeping on a piece of tinfoil, and it sounded like sleeping on a piece of tinfoil. And I slept like shit. And now I use Big Agnes Q-Core SLX. I think it's like 28 ounces or something. It's almost 1.5 pounds. And I'm like, I don't care. It's 4 inches thick. I sleep great. And so that's what I take. And I think a gun is the same way. Like I was trying to get like that sub 8-pound gun. And now that I've been diving back into all this rifle stuff, the next gun I put together, I'm aiming for 10 pounds. Like, do I really care? Like, is that 2 pounds that's really going to make a difference? Like I could take 2 pounds less food. I could take 2 pounds less anything. This is the one device that could be the make it or break it between killing something and not killing something. Yeah, totally. And so having a heavier gun that shoots more stable. And I just think, and I haven't used a lot of titanium action, so I know people might flame me over this and say, oh, this one's fine and that one's fine. Maybe they are, but I just know that my Fierce titanium action always felt sticky as hell, and not sticky. It was just like, I know there wasn't anything physically sticky on it, but I think because it was so light, it wouldn't just like slide like, a nice, steel, heavier, smoother action would. And I don't know if it's the feeding mechanisms on those Fierce, but if you don't load those bullets like perfectly, dude, they get stuck coming out like all the time. And then what I've noticed, what happens is the lug doesn't catch the back of the bullet. And so the nose of the bullet comes up, and then your action lug kind of hits the middle of the cartridge, and it puts like a little dent in it or whatever. And then that 100%. Whole thing gets jammed in there. And every time I pull my bullet out and I've got this like little dent, I literally have a pile of like 4 bullets in the other room, all with this. And now that I've got super anal, because does yours have a magazine, like a clip in it, or does it got a floor plate?
No, it's a floor plate. Yeah.
So exact same setup as mine. And so now that I've got super anal, like I put one bullet in and I like wiggle it around. I'm like, okay, that's good. Then I put the second bullet in and I wiggle it around. And now that I've been that anal, it seems to cycle pretty good for me. But dude, I had nothing but I've had to take that gun apart multiple times, like take the action screws out of the bottom, disassemble the floor plate so that I can get up and inside it. I even remember I was in Colorado and that got stuck on me because the other thing, every time you get back to the truck at the end of the day, you got to unload those bullets. And the only way to unload is to like cycle through them to get them out. Right. And so I got back to the truck at the end of the day in Colorado. I go to cycle through my bullets to get them out, and then one gets stuck. And I literally had to go all the way to Walmart and get, those like 3-piece gun cleaning rods that you screw together. I had to buy one of those, stick it down the barrel, and like be like pretty aggressive, man, like smacking this. And I'm like, I can't believe I'm doing this right now. Like, am I going to damage something? But I'm like, I'm stuck. Like I was trying to find a gunsmith to get this bullet out of the rifle. Like what a freaking nightmare, man.
Yeah. And imagine if you were in front of an animal, a big bull or a big buck, like,
and even worse, already having one round in him and not being able to finish the job. Like, and that's the takeaway for me with rifles. I think everybody loves these hybrid customs because they're as sexy as a custom, but they don't cost what a custom does. And I think I've lost that allure. Like I think you either go with something solid. Like I think there's other stock options beside a Tikka that are good $1,000 to $2,000 rifles that are good, tried and true rifles. I think you do something like that, or literally go drop the $6 or $7 grand and build an actual custom rifle. I'm really not sold on this hybrid market anymore. I think it's a bunch of marketing hype. I'm not impressed with how they shoot. I don't think my Fierce shoots any better than my Tikka did. Like I've shot both of them and I'm the same shooter and I'm getting the equal response, like same size groups at 400. Like it's a very similar experience as far as I'm concerned.
Well, I'm excited to see what you do with your next build. I'll definitely follow that for sure.
I'm also thinking of going a little bit smaller. Like I'm pretty sure I'm set on the 6.5 PRC right now. I don't want to say I'm like a trend follower, but I'm pretty compelled by all this like small, like highly fragmenting, smaller cartridge stuff that's coming out. And my rifle stuff is mostly sheep and goat. I do most of my deer and elk hunting with my rifle. So like, even if you were going to make an argument for a larger caliber on like an elk or a moose or something, I'd rather do that stuff with my bow anyways. So I think that's what I'm leaning towards right now is a Tikka 6.5 PRC. And they have this one particular Tikka called a CTR, which is a compact tactical rifle. And so it actually has a heavier barrel than a regular Tikka. It comes with a muzzle brake, a couple other little bells and whistles. And I think I've seen it in Canada for like around $1,500-$1,600.
Sweet.
Okay.
Maybe that's a review you could consider as like the high end rifle versus the Tikka, and see how different they are and see, how different the quality is in those two. That'd be cool to see.
Yeah, totally. Okay, let's get back on track here. So we're loaded up, we're geared up, we head into the Alpine. Did you do any scouting at all, or was it your first time at that location because you had intel?
It was our first time at that location. I spent the whole year looking over this area on Google Earth and just like studying the exact basin that we wanted to kind of check out and kind of made a plan. But our plan kind of changed, you know, like I wanted to basically just hike straight up through the deadfall, through the timbered areas, and get up to the top, and then follow the top ridge along and kind of hunt down both sides. But it ended up being super, super nasty and super thick. So we side hilled kind of at an angle for about, I'd say, a couple K, and then found kind of a less steep route. It was still nasty. It was still steep. We found a bit of a less steep route. And from that kind of ridge that we took up, we could also glass. So that was another factor. Yeah. So we headed up that kind of spine that went all the way to the top. It was steep. And Tyson's a bit better with the heights than I am, you know.
Do you know what your guys' packs weighed? Sorry to keep interrupting you, but I'm trying to get some details. Do you know what your packs weighed?
You weigh yours, Tyson?
No, I didn't, but I figure 35 maybe.
Okay.
Yeah. Nothing too crazy, but
no, it's very interesting. And I meant to touch on this when you guys said you were only planning to go in for 4 days. I think this is something else. People fall in love with like the 12-day hunt, and I'm victim of it myself. I love going in for big, long hunts. I've come to realize unless I have like really accurate intel from somebody that's like a year or two old, which is very rare, I've never actually had it, or I've been in that location before, I'm done with like going in blind for 12 days and an 80-pound pack. Because you do like, and dude, like what it happens exactly what you guys, all of a sudden this thing that you, and I was interested to hear from you after all that e-scouting, how did it translate to? Because I did the same thing with my goat hunt, man. And I think I thought I had that thing dialed, and then I showed up and I'm like, and I've e-scouted before, but I'm like, there's contours that like are not even showing up on the map here. Like little cliffs that aren't on. And I was just like, and I think what happens is I just think mapping is more detailed some places than others, because it's like, I'm not an idiot. I've done my fair share of e-scouting, and normally I'm pretty good at planning a route. But I think no matter how much e-scouting you do, sometimes you just get there and the shit is like vastly different than you expected.
Oh yeah. Yeah. We were just like, I was looking at it. We were like, oh yeah, we'll just bomb right up there. We get there. It's just like way different than it looked on maps, you know? But that's when you got to adapt, like find a different route or make a plan B, C.
Yeah.
You know?
And that's why I love that you guys are hitting on this, because I think going in for shorter time periods, like maybe planning a couple 3-4 day trips.
Yeah.
And then because that's going to leave you with a lighter pack, it's going to make you more adaptable if things aren't playing out. And then having a couple other, you know, like I realized this year on my goat hunt, I had 3 or 4 plan Bs, but they were all contingent on the main route. And then all of a sudden the main route was screwed. And I was like, holy shit, man, I got caught with my pants down. I brought my buddy all the way here from Alberta. And it's like this thing that on the map, like I thought for sure we're going to be able to cruise 6 kilometers on this ridge. And then once we get back there, this just opens up all over the place. So I was like, we'll go this way or this way or this way. It never even occurred to me that I wouldn't be able to do that initial 6 kilometer ridge line. So it's like, not only did I need a plan B on the micro for that area, I needed a plan B on the macro for like, because like, dude, a road could be washed out. Like there could be all kinds of things that keep you out of your initial area. And so I'm already starting to scout for goat next year, because I want like 3 or 4 completely different areas, 2 or 3 routes within each of those areas, like just a ton of options in case stuff like that happens again.
For sure.
Okay. So we go in, we get shut down because of vegetation and terrain. You find an alternate route that can glass, and then what happens?
So originally we were gonna camp in the timber.
Yeah.
And we were gonna camp in the timber and glass this kind of one big basin. It was pretty rocky. So we get up in there, we're like, man, this is steep. And we're like, okay, we'll go up another 200 yards, see if we can find a flat spot. No flat spot. Go up another 200 yards, no flat spots. We're like, okay, we just need to send it to the top. So it takes us, how long was it, Tyson, to get up there?
Most of the day, I'd say probably 8 hours to get up. We left at first light, basically. We slept in the truck the night before, like drove all night, slept in the truck, and then left first light. And I think we got up there around, it was 2 or 3 in the afternoon. Yeah. We were getting up top.
Yeah, and keep in mind, we're not accounting for there to be water up there. Like we're packing quite a bit of water in both of our packs. So that's where I think a lot of the weight comes from.
Right.
But we're trying to find a camp spot. Anyways, we ended up just sending it straight to the top. It's kind of a knife ridge, and it starts getting just steeper and steeper. And Tyson went ahead of me. I'm like, Tyson, slow down, because I don't do heights very well. But so I'm behind him a bit, but he's about, say, 100 yards above me. He goes, right there. So I bomb up, and he's like, there's a billy right there, and it was out of range, but this beautiful billy on the skyline. And we had just we hiked all day through this nasty stuff. We're bagged. And then you get to the top, like you said, you get up to the top, and it's just like this it opens up into this beautiful alpine, like billy right away, right at the top. And so he kind of crests the ridge and goes and beds on the backside of the knife ridge. So we pop up kind of above him and then start dropping down onto that knife ridge. And when we dropped down, he was bedded, I'd say 259 yards, and was able to make a great shot on him. And it seems like such a short, simple hunt, but when you hike all day long and get up into this area, and then you find this great billy at the top, it was awesome.
How did you guys decide who was going to shoot? In general, how do you guys approach that on hunts?
Dalen was a lot more fired up on goats than me. Basically, it was like, okay, I was gonna be up first for muleys, and then Dalen could do the goat. We just talk about it. We talk it over, weigh it all out. But Dalen just seemed a lot more excited about the tag than me. It was nice. We both had the tag, so we both had the opportunity to shoot one, and I'll get into what the final decision was after the first day there. But he was first and made a good shot on. I'm very excited to get that video out on YouTube, because it's a sweet shot. That's
awesome.
Sweet kill shot. And then if you see the Instagram photo we posted, it's just on top of the world. He couldn't have gone down in a better spot. Stay right up on the top there. It's beautiful scenery up there.
So that was something else, obviously, you're taking into consideration, because I faced that problem. I watched a billy for 6 days this year, and I could not.
That was the stuff. That was the stuff.
Dude, really haunts my dreams to this day. I just couldn't take the shot because I didn't know where he was going to fall. And if he went a one way, it was like, that ain't happening. So again, was that just fortunate? He just the where he was, it was a good location. Yeah.
It's a knife ridge, and there's about, I'd say, 3 to 4 feet of flat on top of this knife ridge, and down both sides, just like a kilometer down, steep stuff. So if he would have, stepped, he would have rolled. I mean, I'm pretty sure we could have recovered him, but just steep stuff. Yeah. So he dropped right on the knife ridge. Super lucky.
Were you thinking about that with shot placement at all? I know some people are thinking they want to anchor him. What was going through your mind? Where did you want to put that bullet?
I didn't really think of that. Goats, their vitals are placed a little bit differently than most ungulates. I think they have lower vitals, but I really wanted to focus on they have they're super furry, so you have to account for that. They have 5 or 6 inches of fur.
They're way smaller than you think. They look big. Yeah.
So I was thinking about a neck shot, but I'm really, do I want to risk it? Because they have 4, 5, 6 inches of fur on either side of that neck. So regular mid-body shot, I went for it, and it did the trick.
Yeah. Yeah. You ended up anchoring him. It's just, he dropped right where he was, and he wasn't moving anywhere. There's a couple points where we were a little worried he was going to kind of roll possibly. So yeah, quick follow-up. We ran down there and did a follow-up, make sure he wasn't going to go down. And then once he was down, it was basically a run up and grab onto him once he was done, and make sure he's not going anywhere, because it's just, like you said, it's a long ways down if he did go down, and would have made for even longer night than what we had ahead of us. I would say around 2 hours before last light is when we got up to him. It was pretty crazy though. We actually everything was just rolling. It was exciting. When you're goat hunting, you're looking for goats. You're looking for big white things up on the mountain. You're not really looking for anything
I
else.
know where this is going.
Yeah. Turns out there's
Very
yeah.
accurate. Yes, I agree with you 100% on all this. Yeah.
Yeah, it turns out there's actually a grizzly about 150, maybe 200 yards from the goat the whole entire time. We had no idea. We had no idea until after the goat was down. We were kind of up above them, getting the packs ready. We were dropping all our camp basically up on the top ridge before we dropped into the saddle. And Dalen spotted the grizz right away. And he's like, grizzly right there. I was like, what? So instantly we're like, he's going for the goat. Like he heard the shot, like the dinner bell. Like we've heard all these rumors. Like he's going for the goat right now. But we watched him for a while, and he was just kind of moping around, just doing his own thing out there. And then start to look around, look down the snow, and we started seeing grizzly tracks everywhere, and kind of really wakes you up of okay, now we have an animal down in a spot where there's a grizzly right there. There's grizzly tracks all up and down the knife ridge. It was pretty scary for a couple of guys that don't have a lot of experience around grizzlies at all. So yeah, we didn't know fully what to expect with the grizzly, but once he saw us and got a wind on us, he got right out of dodge, and we could watch him run away for about a kilometer or so. So it all worked out with the grizz, but it's definitely a scary encounter, just not having a ton of experience with them.
Yeah. Well, and then didn't you like you noticed him later on in some of the footage, right? Like you hadn't even seen him at first, and then when you went and watched it back, you actually had footage of the grizzly.
Yeah, he was in the background of the footage the whole time. It's just a black blob, but like holy crap, he was in frame the whole time. Like
yeah,
we were so focused on the one thing, right? But
yeah,
crazy.
Okay, so you get down there. Did you process him that night? Like, walk me through that.
We got on him right away. We weren't sure if we wanted to do a cape out, and then it was a beautiful goat, beautiful area. He had a good hide on him, so we decided to just do the cape out, and then we bring the cape back to camp and make a decision the next day whether or not we want to bring that out. And ultimately, we ended up bringing it out, and Dalen's got it at the taxidermist right now. A nice little rug on the way, but yeah, took us a while to break them down. Like one thing with filming, and that a lot of people might not realize, or hopefully they realize, is how much extra it adds. So all of a sudden now you have this animal, now you need to do all the extra filming. Oh, okay, I'm standing behind my animal, all this happened, blah 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 blah. We take all these photos. It adds so much onto a hunt. And like this little stuff, like, okay, I have this camera, I have these batteries. There's a lot more complexity behind filming a hunt than actually just going out and doing a hunt. And yep. it adds a lot, but also like we do it because we like it. Like both of us love sharing the content and taking the videos to have these memories forever. Like I'm excited for when I have kids and they grow up older, and I can go back and show them these videos of this epic hunt or this photo on top of the world with all these big snowy mountains in the Rocky Mountains. It's amazing to have those memories captured. But yeah, it definitely adds a lot more. So by the time we got them broke down, it was just before daylight, or just before dark, basically. And we hiked up out of the saddle. Packs were heavy. It was a big goat. It was there's definitely bigger goats out there, but he was pretty big. And then yeah, add the hide as well. We made it just back to our camp where we dropped camp. Actually, we didn't even have a camp there. And our original plan was to work down the knife ridge back to an area where we hadn't gone yet and find somewhere flat, because where we were, it wasn't flat. Like we say 3-4 feet of flat, but it's still not flat.
Right.
And being up on top of the mountain in the dark in middle of nowhere, it's like snowy. There's an avalanche that gave out pretty much right where we were. Looked like maybe a couple days before. We were really trying to find like basically a safe place to camp. Like it's just, you don't want to have the wrong roll and all of a sudden you're rolling down the mountain in your tent in the middle of the night.
Yep.
But we ended up just camping right where we were. We were just like, let's just drop here. It's not going to be a flat sleep, but at least there's like a couple small little pines that I can lean my tent up against, and then Dalen didn't have the level feature of my spot, but it worked. And then yeah, we got a fire going. And once you got that fire going, I don't know. I don't know if Dalen feels the same, but something about a fire that brings comfort when you're in like a uncomfortable spot in
Yeah.
top of a mountain. As soon as you get that fire
100%.
going, it's like, okay, this is home now.
Yeah. Side note, we dropped those quarters about 200 yards before our camp because we knew the grizzlies up there. So we had the gut pile way down the saddle, which is kind of a safety net. Like I find, or from what I've heard, grizzly bears, they tend to go for the gut piles more than they do for the meat. Gut piles are stinkier or whatever.
Yeah.
So we had the gut piles as safety net, and then we dropped the quarters a few hundred yards from where we were camped as well, just in case. We hung them up and got them out, just because we don't want goat quarters in camp, right? With grizzly bears walking that ridge.
Yeah. Did you guys leave them bone in or take bone out?
Bone out. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It was heavy. Then ultimately that night, like I was pretty satisfied with the adventure. We ate the tenderloins over the fire. We were on top of the world. Felt like an amazing hunt. And packing that thing up with a saddle and then plus our heavy camp. The next morning we did a quick glass in the morning, but ultimately I just made the decision of I'll just be on the trigger next time we come for goats. Like I'm totally happy with making our way down because it's just I couldn't imagine doing 2 goats.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
Especially not with the height. Listen, I'm the first guy to do like the hero pack outs and stuff, and I've done whole mule deer and all the rest of it. But like when you're people don't understand what it's like when you're in actual serious mountain terrain. You can break your leg or break your neck, or like it is a totally different concept when you are coming out heavy through that type of terrain. And especially at the beginning of the hunt too, like you still have all your food, you still have all your gear. And I'm assuming there wasn't a water source up there. Was there snow or water? Like, could you have, like, was that even an option if you wanted to stay?
No, it was an option. And we packed in water, but basically the next morning we dumped the water that we just got a free ride to the top of the mountain. Dumped it. It felt horrible, but drank as much as we could. And then I think I dumped 3 liters of water and then crushed the bottles back into the pack and, began the journey down. The journey down didn't take as long as coming up, but it was brutal. It's a lot of weight. Like we got every last little bit of meat off that thing, and then plus the hide, plus camp, steep, gnarly terrain up top with cliffs, and got to really watch every step. And then finally you make it out of that train, and then you get into the timber, and it's like, oh, this is so nice. And then all of a sudden you're 100 yards into the timber, and there's straight deadfall, and now you're having to climb 4 feet up, 4 feet down, underneath that one, 6 feet up, along that log.
Yeah, brutal.
Yeah.
But we love it.
Okay, so I do want to transition and talk about something else. But first, now that you guys have sat with that hunt, I mean, obviously, maybe the answer is none at all. But are there any lessons learned or anything you would do differently next time?
Tyson?
I wouldn't change a thing. It got me excited for sheep. Like sheep's definitely the next step. Goat and sheep is similar, where your goat might even, I'd say, be a little more extreme, and it's really,
I think I like goat more.
Yeah. But
there's something about it, and I don't know. Everybody wants to go sheep hunting, and I don't think goat hunting is as popular. And something about that to me makes it a little bit more rewarding.
Yeah.
And they do tend to be even in crazier places, like you definitely, I've been in some gnarly spots chasing
gnarly animals. That's for sure. Yeah. It was more or less just a confirmation of like, yes, we can do this kind of more extreme hunt. Like this was our first, like kind of really extreme, like almost like you can really get into trouble on that hunt.
Yeah.
And kind of testing out all the gear that we've been building over the past, it's been 3-4 years of building up the gear pack.
I think there's a sense of isolation that people aren't prepared for on those true mountain hunts. Like when you're in BC and you're hunting deer and elk and moose and all the rest of it, you're always like kind of so far from a road, or you're in the timber, or you're in like areas that you're comfortable being in. And I find the first couple times you do true mountain hunting where you're like breaking out into the alpine, there is a psychological barrier to it because it's like you're going further away. I feel a different level of separation. And I think some people can find that stressful. And I think there's some questions there you have to answer for yourself. Like, are you capable of this? How are you going to process this? And I do think those true mountain hunts, there is something different about those than some of the more traditional, like fall meat hunting style stuff that most people do.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's a whole other ball game. And that's just it's extreme. Like it's,
you're raising the stakes. Like everything has a higher consequence. You know, like water is harder to find. You're going to fall more. Finding camp spots can be super challenging. Like everything is just a little bit harder.
Yeah.
Okay, we could talk all night, and I don't want to take too much time, but seeing as it's November and seeing as mule deer is what's on the tip of everybody's mind, I would love to just talk to you guys a little bit about your strategy, some of the tactics that you think have worked well in the past, and like kind of how you're approaching, you know, the rest of mule deer season, and just generally, like, let's just talk mule deer here for a bit, because I think it's kind of front and center for everybody being, you know, early November for BC residents.
Yeah. Tyson could talk a bit more about more rut hunting mule deer, but all the big mule deer that I've shot have been in October.
Okay.
And, you know, October is a month where these big bucks split off from the bachelor groups and they get into these dark, nasty pockets. And we were talking before about our strategy is to hike deep and farther than 95% of people are willing to go. So in October, I like to hit these pockets where these bucks will just be kind of staked and they'll be chilling there until they move during the rut. And you can find little hidey holes where bucks will hang out. And I find it's a totally different ball game than hunting during the rut. You know, hunting during the rut, the bucks are moving a lot. They're on the move. They're dropping elevation, looking for does. So for me, I tend to focus a lot more on mule deer in October.
And so what type of things are you looking for to find those hidey holes? Are you out there looking for sign? Are there physical or terrain features that you're kind of e-scouting? Like, how do you narrow in on these spots?
Yeah. So a lot of the scouting I do is e-scouting. But I tend to look for a lot of plateaus, you know. If you can get like a steeper kind of north-facing timber slope, and you can find plateaus on that slope. These bucks love to hang on these little plateaus where they're secluded, where no one's going to bug them. They feel safe. And I found that I've been super successful in finding deer on those plateaus. Every area is different, right? All areas of BC have different terrain features, but I find that the steep, dark timber has produced the best for me in October.
Yeah, I've talked with Jordan quite a bit, you know, Jordan Kowalczyk.
Yeah. Those guys are sweet, yeah.
Great guy, absolute killer, and he would profess the same strategy. And I think he's also, if I remember correctly, I think he's also had a lot of success in October. It's funny too, because a lot of the whitetail guys tell me they've killed a lot of their big whitetail in September. Again, before that whitetail rut kind of kicks into play. And I do think, especially being an archery hunter, they're a little more predictable a little earlier on. I've actually fallen out of love with rut hunting to a certain degree, even when it comes to whitetails. I think there's a certain lottery with the rut. Like you might see a buck you've never seen before and you kind of never know what's going to happen. And there's maybe a bit more action going on, but I think you nailed it, man. I think if you've got time to learn a spot and kind of figure out patterns and where somebody you're living, I think you actually have a much higher likelihood of finding and killing a target buck in that period than you do during the rut. Because they do weird shit, like they'll go on lockdown and disappear for a week and a half, or just leave the area completely and another buck comes in. Like, I think there's so much more randomness at play when the rut kicks in, which is part of what makes it fun. But I think I don't want to say it's luck, but there's a little more chance involved in killing a big buck in the rut than there is kind of pre-rut, I think.
Totally agree. Yeah. Yeah, like even with the big mule deer that I shot, I call him Lucky, but he was in a pocket and he did not move from that pocket. I got trail cam photos of him first in 2021, picked up his sheds, 2 sets of sheds in 2022 within like a square kilometer radius. And trail cam photos the next year of him, same spot. I ended up missing him in 2022. And then the year I followed him, like looking for his sheds, setting trail cameras in that 1 square kilometer spot. And the next year, 2023, he was in the exact same spot on the exact same plateau. And that's where I shot him.
Dude, I think people underestimate how localized those areas are. So I've been doing some local blacktail hunting around home. It's about the only thing that I can do day hunting. And a buddy of mine had sent me a pin where he shot a big buck, I want to say like 2-3 years ago. And it was an area I was going to go look at anyways, but it's always nice to have some confirmation that there was at least previously a big buck in the region. And I'd hiked through this area earlier in the spring, kind of looking for tracks, and not even the spring, like maybe June or July, looking for sign and looking to set cams. And I didn't bother leaving any, but I had a good idea of where a good route would be. And I'm taking this route down and I literally get to 20 yards from his pin and the bush explodes. And I'm like, what? And I'm going pretty like, I'm still hunting. I'm not running. I'm being cognizant, but I'm still making noise. Like, and at first I think I blow out the deer and I hear something bounding off. And then all of a sudden, and I hear the grunts and I'm like, what? And then thrashing and I can like see brushes moving. I'm like, what is going on? And I think what happened is I broke up a buck with his doe or more. And I think the doe ran off, but that buck was so hyper territorial, he wasn't even going to run away because he's all rutted up right now. And he hung out there for like 45 minutes to an hour. And it was so thick, I couldn't see him. I was probably 30 yards. I could hear him breathing. I could hear his antlers like just brushing on stuff. And then he would start raking and thrashing. I could see stuff moving. And then he would be grunting at me and I could hear the articulation in the grunts. And I even backed out and kind of went up around on this rocky outcropping and looked back down in the area. And he's still just grunting and thrashing around. And I'm just like, and I didn't want to push in and I didn't bring any of my calls with me. And blacktail are pretty callable. I've called one right in before with one of those shitty little Primos tip over cans. They work phenomenally. It's crazy. But I didn't bring any with me. And I was like, it's so thick. I'm like, if I force this, I'm just going to blow him out. So I never went back in. And after a while, he just went quiet. I don't know if he walked away or if he just calmed down. But dude, 3 years later, and I think those spots are even more permanent than the bucks that inhabit them. Like, you know, that where I saw that goat for 6 days this year, I guarantee somebody kills that goat within a year or two, another goat, probably less, probably a couple months. There will be whoever is the next biggest goat on that mountain is going to be in that bed. Like for that territory, those are the beds and like those are locations that are going to hold the big bucks. And when those big bucks either vacate or get killed, I think the next biggest buck goes, I bet you go right back into that spot 2 years from now or whatever, next fall, you'd find another buck right in that spot. Like, and it can be such a small area sometimes. Like it's taken me a long time to like clue into that, but I think that's a big thing to unlock as far as like chasing big deer goes.
100%, man. I totally agree.
Absolutely. And like having that ability to find these spots and then actually like take an inventory of these deer and know, okay, this is a good up and comer. This deer needs to be passed for 3 years. In 3 years, he's going to be a really nice deer, and having that self-control, which I didn't quite have this year. I ended up a smaller deer this year, but yeah.
That's fine too, man. Sometimes hunting's fun and sometimes she just has to die. Like, I like killing stuff in the woods, man. I'm not going to lie. Like, you know, my Colorado deer last year is no monster by any stretch of the imagination, but it's like, I wasn't driving all the way to Colorado and coming home empty handed. You know what I'm saying? So when I saw tines, that thing died, man. And I have zero regrets. I was like more than happy to kill that deer. So yeah.
That goes to say about like why why we hunt. And like, yes, meat is the number one, but
Yeah.
you think the experience itself is way more important than actually harvesting something sometimes. Like it's
Yeah.
going out and actually being out there. Like that's where the love and the passion goes to is being outdoors and just chasing around no matter what it is. If it's rutted up bucks, if it's October bucks, like it's elk screaming at your face. Like there's so many different aspects that transition throughout the season, where for myself, it's amazing how I evolved from obsessed with elk in September, and it's all I think about season leading up. And then by the time September and October is rolling around, this year definitely making that transition of like, okay, we're excited for this goat hunt. This is going to be sweet. And then right away, mealies are around the corner, and start to think about mule deer and getting all excited on them. But for this year, my mealy was not what I expected. It's a cool story in that we prepared for basically 2 weeks getting gear all ready to go, and then had a long drive with the truck, and then headed in with quads. It was a 2 hour quad ride into our spot, and spent an hour getting our camp set up. Super excited. We had food for 5 days, 4 nights.
Yeah.
Had the buddy heater and the big 13-man tent. It's
Couple cups,
goes,
yeah.
goes to say about the gear, like you don't need the big fancy wall tent. Like I had a handy down 13-man tent, and we got the cot set up there and the barbecue, little folding table, just making do with what we had. And yeah, as soon as I got camp set up, I went out to use the washroom, the great outdoors there, undid my pants and looked up on the ridge, and there's a nice buck staring down at us. And yeah, it was just crazy how it all happened. But yeah, I ended up getting a nice bench rest accuracy right on the quad. I set up my lawn chair, debated it for a while. He eventually crested the ridge, but yeah, I made the decision that it was a nice deer and a deer that I wanted, and unfortunately ended the hunt early. But fortunately had a buck on the ground, some meat in the freezer, and then we actually just stayed a night up there. The next day we just kind of glassed around during the day, had a big fire. We had all this food for over the next couple of days, so we just had a glorious breakfast the next morning. It was a fun experience for sure. But that's just to say a little bit about mule deer in the rut, and that you never know when it's going to happen. They could be anywhere. So I just happened to catch this buck cruising down from high elevation. He's cruising down to where all the does are. Rut hunting is basically finding those does. Like you got to hunt those does. You got to find those pockets with those does. And definitely when rut's really starting to peak off, yeah, I love that kind of curiosity of you have no idea what's going to move in. One day you might find that group of does. There's 8 does there with a 2-point. And it's like, okay, that's not good. Come back the next day, there could be 150 plus inch mealy running all those does just from overnight that moved in from who knows how far, 10K away. That they move so much, those mealies. So definitely different techniques for hunting mule deer, based on the time of year for sure. Preference is to find those hidey holes and get those bucks in October, and that's when you can really get to know an animal and then do the passing over multiple years and watch that animal grow, find a target buck. But when it comes down to rut hunting, yeah, you never know what to expect. You can run into anything at any point.
How long do you think the rut goes in your area? Like, yeah.
Well, we hunt a couple different spots, so we do a couple different regions. So well, I can say region based, but yeah, region 8, the season ends on the 10th. So you're kind of limited. Like you're
Right.
only getting a few days of kind of rut. I'd say November, maybe 5th, it's starting to really ramp up. And right when things are getting good, it shuts down. So and then we're able to move up to region 3 there and find some bucks through the rut there. And then yeah, the post rut's a whole other story, but save
Yeah,
that.
I think I'm going to do an archery mule deer season the first week of December. This is going to be my first year doing that. And at first I wasn't super excited about it. I'm like, oh, it's going to be a bit of a grinder. And then the more I'm thinking about it, the more I'm thinking this has the potential to be a phenomenal hunt. I think there's a lot of different factors at play. I love hunting deer with snow on the ground. I'd way rather hunt deer with snow than without it. I think you could totally, I mean, I haven't, even when I hunted blacktail, I was always targeting like Halloween, early November. I felt like those blacktail maybe rutted a little bit earlier. I don't know if that's just like nonsense gibberish, but that was always what I was taught. Like Halloween, the blacktail rut kind of kicks off. I can't say as I've ever done a lot of late November hunting. So I don't know if I'm going to be like post rut. Are they still going to be rutting a little bit? I don't even really know what to expect. But I think it has, and to be honest with you, I didn't even know we had a late season mule deer archery hunt in BC. I knew we had a late season bow hunt for whitetail. I've done the one in 8 once. And I know I think there's one in 3 as well, right?
Yeah.
In some units in 3, there's a late season whitetail. But whitetail are one of those ones I feel like if you don't have spots, they're a much harder animal for me to just hunt on the fly, like just rock up cold and hunt whitetail. I feel like mule deer and elk, I kind of understand. So I don't necessarily have to have been to a location to hunt it. Whereas I feel like whitetail, if I don't have some kind of trail cam info or stand set up, I feel like I'm kind of like just shooting in the dark. And I feel like my chances. So when I was going over my options, like, okay, I got a week. Should I go do whitetail or should I go do mule deer? The more I thought about it, the mule deer seemed like the more interesting play. And B, maybe counterintuitively the play with a higher likelihood of success.
Yeah. Nothing beats pushing timber in the snow and getting on a track and following that buck.
Yep.
It's just, that's fun. That's such a nice way to get on mule deer, is just when there's fresh snow and you cut a set of 5 tracks, you're like, oh, okay, game on, let's go.
Yeah.
And this pretty much any step you're playing this game of, can I see them before they see me? And I love that. I love chasing tracks in the snow and eventually finding out what those deer are. It's a lot of fun. But whitetail are hard. They take a lot of time. Like it's definitely an animal. Like I've gotten 2 nice whitetail now. And the one for sure, I spent pretty much June all the way through to, I think I got him was November 15th. So right in the rut when he started to slip up, but just a total nocturnal deer, tons of trail cam photos, like so smart. Whitetail can be so smart. Definitely those older bucks. And you got to spend a lot of time and catch them on the right day with the right doe for them to slip up. They're a hard animal to hunt, those mature whitetail. Even though there's not a lot of hype, there's a lot more hype around mule deer and elk, that's for sure. But a lot of people forget about whitetail. But props go out to the guys that actually spend time on a target whitetail buck and can make it happen.
Yeah, it was kind of brutal this year because I spent so much time, setting up cams and licks and everything up in the piece for whitetail. And then I basically guided for 2 straight months and I came home and I could just tell, looking at my wife, I'm like, oh, I'm not going away in November like I thought I was. And it's like, I've learned when to pick my battles. And it was just a bit of a gut punch because it's like, oh my God, all those trips, all that salt, all those cans, and it's like those spots are just sitting there. And I know if I just had 3 or 4 days, like there's a dead whitetail in it, like no doubt, this time of year, like, especially if you're willing to sit all day, like, but it's just the way the cookie crumbles. But funnily, I used to write off whitetail hunting. I thought stand hunting was boring. I thought it was something like fat guys on the East Coast did. And then I did it once or twice and I started looking into what it actually took to kill big whitetails. And I think there's elements of that are just as hard or even harder than mountain hunting. I just think it's a different kind of hard. And I love it, but it is mountain hunting. You like, just like we were talking about with deer and elk, I find like you can rock up and do it anywhere. Maybe you're successful, maybe you're not, you'll still have a good time. But I find like stand hunting and whitetail hunting, you got to take the time to develop spots or it's not something, unless you're just an absolute whitetail genius, which I am not. It is not something I possess the skill set to just rock up and be successful at, which is why I'm going to roll the dice with the mule deer. And again, like, dude, we can hunt blacktail down here with a rifle until December 15th. And I have had phenomenal winter blacktail hunting. Same thing you're talking about, cutting tracks, man. And they're still kind of stupid, like rutted out, like you're not quite as switched on, and they're still kind of focused on the does. And the does are going to be really slow, and the bucks aren't going to. It's like the does are what's helping you catch the bucks. Like, and so as long as you cut like 2 or 3 tracks in a row, yeah, it's happened to me a few times, man, where you catch up to blacktails in the thick timber. So I'm excited for the opportunity. I think it could turn out to be and I'm doing the same thing, man, taking the big teepee, going to take the, titanium stove and the cot and like have more of a base camp style hunt where I can have some good food and a warm sleep at night, and then just be out in the snow glassing and hunting still hunting the timber all day.
Right on.
Yeah, that's going to be a good hunt for sure.
Yeah, I'm stoked. Well, fellas, I appreciate it, man. And I feel like there's lots more that we could talk about. So we'll have to get you back on here for sure. I would love to have a chat about elk, because that's kind of my true passion. Like, I like all this other stuff, but chasing bugling bulls in the rut is like that. If I could only do one thing for the rest of my life, that's what I would do. So I would love to get into that. Are you guys going to Sheep Show again this year?
100%. Yeah.
Awesome. I'll be there. I got a bigger booth this year, so there'll be lots of room to like hang out, chill out. So please come on by, hang out for a bit. Yeah, it'll be good to catch up. But is there anything, like I said to people listening, I'll put all the links for the lads down in the show notes below. Anything you guys want to say? You got an ETA on when you think you're going to have some films coming out, or anything you want to share with people before we kind of shut her down?
I can't make any promises on when we're getting videos out.
Okay.
We got to spend times with the girlfriends here.
Yeah, fair enough.
Post hunting season, we're gone for basically 3 months straight, it seems like. So
yeah,
got to get out of the doghouse and work our way back indoors. But yeah, there's definitely a lot more for us to touch on. I'm excited. There's lots about elk and our evolution of elk hunting from when we first started in 2020 to where we're at now. But other than that, like, I'd like to just thank you for the opportunity to have us on the podcast.
Yeah, thank you.
No, my pleasure. You guys are inspiring, man. Like I said, there's lots of people kind of coming online, and I had this conversation the other day with somebody, or I made a reel about it, I think. If you do something you love, it doesn't matter how hard it gets, you will stick with it. And I see a lot of people coming online now, and you see them stick it out for a season and they just fade away or burn out because they were doing it for the wrong reasons. And it's hard to stay motivated when you're doing it for the wrong reasons. But when I see younger guys like you who are super passionate and just trying to share their love of the discipline or the sport or whatever you want to call it, this thing that we do, I get super motivated by it. So if there's ever anything I can do to help out, and please let me know when films are going to come out or any other kind of stuff, I'll always share it on the channel and try and get you guys some traffic. So
appreciate that.
I appreciate it. All right, lads, have yourself a good night. We'll chat soon.
Thank you so much. Take care.
Cheers.